I am Dr. Vitria Bird with the Polytechnic Institute at Purdue University, and I am presenting a design activity worksheet method for developing research questions. This work describes a progressive plan for developing research questions using a series of 4 design activity worksheets. The worksheets guide students through the cognitive and metacognitive processes of choosing topics, asking questions, identifying an appropriate problem, and locating adequate data sources. Developing good research questions is a skill that is developed over time and is often difficult for students. In executing a research project, there are grand ideas, good ideas, and doable ideas. Being able to recognize these differences is essential to moving the project from planning to data collection to analysis and finally to implementation. However, most graduate students do not have extensive experience in research methodology, and they struggle with identifying a problem, then developing a reasonable approach to solve the problem. The worksheet method presented here was created to capture key elements of each stage for developing research questions in a one-page format. The method walks students through the process of identifying topics, transforming the topics into questions, using answers to those questions to build a sound problem statement, then identifying data sources to support the subsequent implementation of a research plan. The worksheets can be completed independently of each other. For scaffolding in this work, the worksheets were utilized in the order presented in this presentation. For each step, the goals, objectives, and expected outcomes for each worksheet are provided. The goal of the first worksheet in the series, entitled Identifying Topics, is to identify and rank a minimum of 3 topics of interest. Students will choose one topic as the focal point for the remaining worksheets. Key points for this particular worksheet are encouraging students to articulate what they do not know about each topic. Upon completing this worksheet, students will generate, compare, and rank topics of interest and identify who the intended audience is for their work. The goal of the second worksheet, entitled From Topics to Questions, is to get a better understanding of the topic. To do this, students are asked to answer a number of indirect questions. For example, what, why, and how about their topic. Asking these questions and answering these questions indicates what is unknown or what is not understood about the topic. Articulating what they hope to help the readers to understand motivates students to think about the topic from a perspective other than their own. The goal of the third worksheet, entitled From Questions to a Problem, is to transition from a specific question to developing a problem statement. Upon completing this worksheet, students will identify the situation or condition they desire to address, the consequences caused by that condition, and why it is important to address the problem. The goal of the fourth worksheet, entitled From a Problem to Data Sources, is to help students identify and acquire data for the chosen topic, evaluate data sources for relevance and reliability, and determine the availability of data and the data sources. The worksheets were assigned to 3 graduate student cohorts as part of a graduate seminar at Purdue University over a 4-week period. A total of 55 students enrolled in the 1-credit graduate seminar in fall 2019. The cohorts consisted of 20 students in their first semester, 9 students in their second semester, 26 students in their third semester of graduate school. The worksheets and assessments were given as homework assignments at the end of each class period that met weekly for 50 minutes. Data collection consisted of the design activity worksheets and post-worksheet survey responses. Only results from the post-worksheet assessment are presented in this work, using the mean and frequency of responses as statistical indicators. 49 students completed the Identifying Topics worksheet. The mean value for each question ranged from 3.38 to 3.57. A mean value between 3 and 3.9 corresponds to a neutral response on the Likert scale. For this study, a neutral value of 3.5 or higher is considered a favorable response, leaning more towards agree. A neutral value between 3 and 3.4 is considered leaning more towards disagree. Question 1 has a mean value of 3.38, which suggests, on average, students were neutral regarding the worksheet's usefulness in identifying topics, leaning more towards disagree. Question 2 and question 3 had the same mean value of 3.57, which passes the threshold of 3.5 as an indicator of positive or favorable responses for the study. To further explore the mean values, frequencies of responses for each question were examined. 41% of responses were neutral and 37% of responses were agree for question 1. Given the ambiguity of the neutral response and the high frequency of agree responses to questions 2 and question 3, we conclude the overall assessment for the Identifying Topics worksheet is favorable. Assessment for the Topics to Questions worksheet consisted of 2 questions. The mean for both questions were above the favorable or positive threshold for the study. Question 1 had a mean value of 3.5, and question 2 had a mean value of 3.58. Overall, the assessment for this worksheet is considered favorable and positive. Students found the worksheet to be helpful for articulating what they want to find out about their topic and what they want their readers to understand about their topic. The questions to a problem worksheet assessment consisted of 3 questions. The mean value for question 1 is 3.64, indicating on average, students found the worksheet to be helpful in identifying their topics as a practical or conceptual problem. However, the mean values for question 2 and question 3 were below the 3.4 threshold for the study. We examine the frequency of responses for each question on the next slide. Evaluation of frequency responses for each question shows, although the mean value for question 2 is 3.29, corresponding to an overall neutral response on the Likert scale, frequency responses for question 2 show a combined 56% of responses were either agree or strongly agree, which is greater than the combined 45% that were either strongly disagree, or neutral. Similarly, the mean value for question 3 is 3.48, corresponding to an overall neutral response on the Likert scale. Frequency responses for question 3 show a combined 59% of responses were agree or strongly agree, which is greater than the combined 45% that were either strongly disagree, or neutral for question 3. Overall, we conclude the responses were favorable and positive. Students found the worksheets to be helpful, identifying topics as a practical or conceptual problem, which corresponds to question 1. Students found the worksheet to be helpful, identifying what the reader should do as a practical problem, corresponding to question 2. Students found the worksheet to be helpful, identifying what the reader should think, corresponding to a conceptual problem for question 3. There were 4 assessment questions for the last worksheet entitled from a problem to data sources. All mean values are below the 3.4 study threshold. The means oscillated between the lowest mean value for question 1, which is 3.12, to the highest calculated mean value for question 4, which is 3.36. The calculated means indicate, on average, students were neutral regarding the worksheet's usefulness in helping to identify different types of data sources. In the next slide, we examine the frequency responses for each question. There is an 8% difference between the frequency responses of neutral and agree for question 1. The most frequent response for the remaining questions, questions 2, 3, and 4, is agree. We conclude the overall assessment for the worksheet to be favorable and positive. Overall, students' perception of the series of worksheets in helping to develop research questions was positive. The mean for all worksheets hovered around a value of 3, but was very close to 4, indicating a positive perception of the series of worksheets to help students gain experience developing research questions. The largest number of responses were received from the first worksheet, identifying topics. The number of students completing the assessment and worksheets continued to decrease each week, as seen in column 2. The red arrows indicates a decrease in the number of participants from one worksheet to the next. The green arrows indicate an increase in the number of participants from one worksheet to the next. Although we are encouraged by the favorable outcomes, we do acknowledge there are a number of limitations with the study. First, the relatively small sample size. To address this issue, we anticipate more students will enroll in the graduate seminar, therefore increasing the number of students who utilize this worksheet in developing research questions. In the future, we will use an even-numbered Likert scale so that we can accurately or more accurately determine if the neutral response is negative or positive. More work is needed in guiding students through the process of thinking through ideas for topics, specifically for first and second semester students. We will ensure the worksheets are amenable to both quantitative and qualitative research methods. Future versions of the worksheets will also take into account other possible states that students could be in their research and provide questions that will allow them to elaborate more on their research status. The method presented here was intended to be a starting point. We will examine among those students who reported having an existing research topic before completing the worksheet, whether the topic was reached by the student or identified by the student's advisor. We will also give students the option to seek feedback from their research mentors as they complete the worksheets. Finally, we are preparing a comparative study among different cohorts to evaluate the perceived value of the worksheets over time and determine at what point the worksheets are most effective. In conclusion, we acknowledge the word research has different implications in different disciplines. The design activity worksheets guides students through the process of identifying research topics, identifying a problem to be addressed by their work, and clearly stating their research question. At a minimum, the worksheet method motivates students to think critically about their topics, the questions they need to ask, and the data needed to support their research. The worksheets can be used to complement pedagogy of research methods as well as points of reference as students rotate out of the graduate course and transition into their research roles. This concludes the presentation. Thank you so much for your time.